Hello, friends. If everyone could please find a seat. Thank you. Today's service for Mark will be officiated by Rabbi Sarah Rich and Cantor Mark Spindler of Temple Beth Tzedek. As a friendly reminder, if you have a cell phone, please put it on silent mode at this time. Family just did the ritual of Kriya, and they will now be entering the sanctuary momentarily. Thank you.
Today, in sorrow, we gather to remember Mark Rodman and to offer our comfort to his family. We begin our service with the recitation of psalms and prayers, thus linking Mark's life with the millennia-old tradition of the people Israel. Adonai, who may abide in your house, who may dwell in your holy mountain, those who are upright, who do justly, who speak the truth within their hearts, who do not slander others or wrong them or bring shame upon them, who scorn the lawless but honor those who revere God, who give their word and come what may do not retract, who do not exploit others, who do not take bribes. Those who live in this way shall never be shaken. Kohelet wrote, "The eye never has its fill of seeing. Young or old, those who depart this life never see enough of the world, never complete their task, never cherish their loved ones enough before they are called home. How they yearned for yet another respite from the final summons, and how we yearned to have them close to us for yet another challenge in our lives, yet another joy, yet another precious moment together. God, be now with those whose hearts are broken, because whenever parting comes, it comes too soon. Console them at this moment. Be near to them when light seems distant. Sustain them, O God, until the time of healing." Cantor Spindler will now lead us in the 23rd Psalm.
Adonai, roi lo echsar, bin oteshe yarbitzeini, al mei menuchot, Yenaleni nafshi yeshovev yanecheni v'magle tzedek yanecheni v'magle tzedek leman shemo gam ki helech begetz al mavet lo irara ki ata imadi shivtecha o mishanetecha hema yenachamuni תערוך לפניי, לפניי, שולך נגד צורריי. דשנת ושמן ראשי, כוסי רוויה. אך טוב וחסד ירדפוני, כל ימי חיי, כל ימי חיי, ושבתי בבית אדוני לאורך ימים. אדוני רואי לא אחסר, אדוני רואי לא אחסר.
Adonai is my shepherd, I shall not want. God makes me lie down in green pastures, leads me beside still waters, and restores my soul. You lead me in right paths for the sake of your name. Even when I walk in the valley of the shadow of death, I shall fear no evil, for you are with me. Your rod and your staff, they comfort me. You have set a table before me in the presence of my enemies. You have anointed my head with oil, my cup overflows. Surely goodness and mercy shall follow me all the days of my life, and I shall dwell in the house of God forever. We'll now have the opportunity to hear more about Mark from the perspective of his loved ones. I'd like to first call forward Phil Rothman.
I'm Phil Rothman, Mark's first cousin, once removed. And that rather clinical description of our relationship doesn't do it justice. The Rodmans were always there from the beginning of my life. And Mark, Barbara, Scott, Marnie, so many memories. If I recalled them all, we'd be here forever. But the good news is that because there are so many memories of those natures, Mark's memory will live forever. I will recall one of my earliest memories, and it was of my cousin Mark playing the piano. As you know, he loved music, among so many other things. So effortlessly, he played the piano with such talent, passion, nuance. No doubt it made an impact on me when I decided to pursue my chosen profession of music. Throughout my childhood, our days at the Williamsville schools, all the way up to the premiere of one of my compositions at Carnegie Hall, the Rodmans were there. Mark was there, cavelling. He couldn't have been more proud. I knew he took such pleasure in it. Even as I've had the great pleasure of working with some of the finest musicians in the world, Mark is right up there in his skill and, above all, his passion, his love for music and so many other things. Mark and I, we had a little bit of a mutual admiration society. He loved good music, and I loved corny jokes. So we always knew that in the other, we had a willing audience. That passion that Mark had didn't just extend to music. It extended to his chosen profession of optometry. And another one of my earliest memories is of Mark being my eye doctor, of being my optometrist, as probably so many in this room have had that same experience. You know, when you go to Mark, or really any eye doctor, I suppose, you are examined, and Mark would, of course, tell some jokes to put you at ease, and then give you the choices of the lens, and he would ask, is this better, worse, or about the same? And of course, as I was driving here with my wife today, I was thinking about that. And that's true in life as well. And the people that you meet in life. With some people, you meet them and you go on and your life is about the same. With others, unfortunately, sometimes it's a little bit worse. But with Mark, when you encountered him and you walked away, life was always better. It was always better. He loved it. He loved his patients. I mean, you just needed to look at his license plates and that would tell you, IDOC 1 and I fix eyes. But Mark loved nothing more than his family. And that love for his family extended to his extended family, his friends, which he considered his family. He first met my wife, Jake, and I'm certain that he was more excited to meet her than I was excited to meet Jake. That's how ecstatic he was. I'll never forget that. And I know it's the same with you, Elliot, and my brother, Elliot, and your wife, Nancy, and your two beautiful daughters, Charlie and Kia. He regarded them all as his own. Such a magnanimous person. My father regarded Mark as his best friend. My mom and my uncle Rick and his wife, Aunt Sharon, regarded him as a brother. And unfortunately, they were unable to make the trip today from Atlanta and the Phoenix area, respectively, but my Uncle Rick put together a few words which I'd just like to share with you now. The Kellers and Rodmans shared a home at 153 Stratford Road in North Buffalo from 1949 to 1958. After a few years, both families relocated to the suburbs and lived across the street from each other on Sunrise Boulevard. Mark was more than a little brother to me, rather than just a first cousin. I will always have fond memories of growing up together. As children, the early Saturday morning cartoons, going to the movies in the afternoon with our friends, cartoons, and a Three Stooges short. Our interest in pro sports through our teens, joining a high school fraternity. I got him a part-time job at Hens and Kelly's where I worked selling shoes. Our adult years started when Mark served as the best man at my wedding. I will always cherish the memories of our Sunday morning golf group. This wonderful man had a philosophy of the glass always half filled, not half empty. He was so well versed in so many areas: music, theater, science, sports, and politics. He was a credit to his profession, one of the best optometrists in Western New York. He was a kind man who loved his wonderful family. They deserve so much credit for the hard work caring for him over these last few difficult years. Mark would be very upset with me if I failed to mention how far he could drive a golf ball.
Thank you. And I'd like to call forward his children, Scott and Marnie.
Am I going first? Oh, it's quiet in here. It's like a funeral in here. Well, those who know me know that I have a bit of a reputation of being verbose, and I've given long-winded speeches in the past. Brevity has never been my strong suit. In fact, many judges have mentioned that before after an oral argument. But I'm here today to reassure all of you that today will be no exception. For anyone who knew my dad for more than about 5 minutes, there's a pretty good chance that you heard him at some point say, "Oh, that reminds me, did you ever hear the one about?" And then came the joke. It didn't necessarily have to be a good joke. In fact, it almost certainly was not. But somehow, no matter what we were talking about, my dad had a joke that was at least tangentially related to the subject. His mind was like this enormous Rolodex of jokes accumulated over 77 years. You could mention anything, and somewhere in his brain, a card would flip over, and out would come the joke. And if we groaned at the punchline, which of course we always did, that didn't discourage him in the slightest, because my dad loved to laugh. He had a great laugh. And more importantly, he loved making other people laugh. I think that's a pretty good place to start talking about who my dad was. Anyone who knows him knows my dad was an eternal optimist. Some might say blind optimist. He looked for the good in people and the silver lining in every situation. He believed in the inherent goodness of people, and he enjoyed talking to them. He enjoyed hearing their stories. It's probably one of the reasons he loved being an optometrist so much. My dad never retired. People sometimes ask him when he was going to, because he was well into his 70s and was still working, and the answer was basically that he never wanted to retire because he loved what he did. For nearly 50 years, people walked into his office every day with some problem with their eyes or their vision, and my dad got to meet them, talk to them, figure out how to help them, and hopefully send them back out into the world seeing a lot better than when they walked in, because that meant something to him. And I remember being so proud of him. When I was a little kid, I occasionally came to the office at Sears Optical with him, and I got to just hang out there and go around Summit Park Mall. But I always used to do this thing when I was a little kid where I would sit in the waiting room with all the other patients to be waiting for their turn with my dad. And I would, in my mind, think, oh, they must just assume this is some random kid here. But when my dad came out, I'd make it a point to interrupt him for some reason before he could call them out, because in my mind, that meant that those random people were saying, oh my, you mean that little boy sitting there is actually the doctor's son? And that, to me, was how I felt about him. And I remember always being so proud to see how he would walk out of every appointment, and you could tell that the people were still continuing the conversation with him and still thanking him and shaking his hand. He was genuinely fascinated by eyes and vision. He served on boards, gave presentations, and stayed involved in his profession throughout his career. But I don't think the science was the only reason he loved the optometry. It's because he loved people. Every patient was someone new to talk to, and presumably somebody new who hadn't suffered through his jokes yet. He continued practicing until his illness finally made it impossible, worked right up until it happened. And had that not happened, I'm not entirely convinced he ever would have stopped. There was another extraordinary part of my dad that anyone who spent any time in our house knew about, and that was that, boy, could he play the piano. And when I say he could play it, I don't mean he was pretty good at it. He was remarkable. When I was a kid, or when he was a kid, his parents, my grandparents, Seymour and Sylvia, had a baby grand player piano that was my grandfather's. My dad took some lessons, but the problem was he didn't particularly like being told how he was supposed to play. Reading the sheet music and practicing exercise and doing things the formal way, that wasn't really him. So eventually he stopped taking the lessons. But then they heard him to start playing, because he just taught himself how to play. He somehow discovered that he could hear music and simply play it by ear, and that was anything. He had a seemingly endless library of music in his head. When we were kids, we would come home from the movies, and Dad would sit down at the same baby grand piano he'd grown up with, because he had it restored fully in the 90s. And suddenly he'd start playing the theme or the score from the movie we had just watched. No sheet music, he just heard it. He could hear a popular song on the radio, turn it into a piano piece, movie themes, Broadway songs, standards, popular music. It was all stored somewhere in his head. And of course, as kids, we didn't really know how unusual that was. It was just him playing the piano, but now we appreciate how truly extraordinary it actually was. And the funny thing is that for someone like my father who had so much talent in that regard, he wasn't really interested in performing. Most of the time he played for an audience of one, himself, usually waiting for my mom to finish getting ready. In other words, he had a lot of time to kill. And he would sit on the piano, often with his eyes closed, completely lost in the music. And that piano is now in Marnie and Armand's home. And I love that. It belonged to my grandparents. My dad learned to play on it. It filled our childhood home with music, and now it remains a part of our family. Dad kept playing long into his illness. Even as the illness progressed and other abilities began slipping away, he could still sit at a piano and make music. He was able to entertain and amaze the fellow residents and staff at his rehab with his piano prowess when he was struggling in so many other areas, but he could communicate through the piano. So many things became difficult for him, but somewhere inside of him, the music was always there. And of course, Dad always loved golf, really loved it. He could always find the time for 18 holes, played with friends, family, and continued playing regularly until his illness made it impossible. And in 2013, I got an opportunity to do something for him that remains one of my favorite memories of our life together. We always watched the Masters tournament every April, and going to the Masters had always been a pipe dream of his, a bucket list item. And so I surprised him in 2013 with a father-son trip to the Masters. We got to watch Saturday and Sunday together. And for a lifelong golfer, it was heaven. He was obsessed with Saturday, simply following Tiger Woods. And about halfway through the back nine, Tiger Woods tipped his cap at my dad, and he wouldn't shut up about it for the rest of the trip. He got to walk Augusta National and watch the final rounds of the Masters in person. And when we got home, he was the envy of all of his golf buddies, and I was proud of that. But what matters now is not really that we went to the Masters, is that we got to experience that together. I got him all to myself for that trip, and I got to treat him to something special to show how much I appreciated all he'd ever done for me, and it's a father-son memory that I'll always keep thinking about. Another one was when I was 8 years old, we took a trip to Disney World, and my dad did not like roller coasters, but I did, and Space Mountain was not busy. And these days, we went over Christmas, and Disney World was just not busy in those times in the 80s, and so I wanted to ride it again, and again, and again. And my dad went with me again and again and again, and at 8, I thought I had a really cool dad who was excited to ride Space Mountain 5 times in a row with me. But at 48, I understand that I had a dad who was willing to do something that made him very uncomfortable because it made his kid happy, and that he'd never even let on that he was uncomfortable if he knew that that was the right thing to do and that would make me happy. He didn't get to travel as much as he would have wanted when we were young. He was self-employed and running his own practice. It made it difficult to disappear for long stretches, but later in life he did have a few opportunities for travel. And one of those was a trip that meant something very special to all of us, and that was a trip that he took to Israel. Around New Year's 2017 into 2018, my wife Carrie and Livy and baby Alec at the time traveled with members of her family to Israel. My parents had never been there. And as a Jew, even a pretty secular Jew, I was amazed at how emotional and spiritual an experience it was for him. He got to walk through the city of Jerusalem. He prayed at the Kotel, the Western Wall. He experienced the vibrancy of Tel Aviv, and he watched the sunrise from the top of Masada. And I'm grateful that he had the opportunity to stand in those places that mean so much to our people. And I'm grateful that I was standing there with him. Of course, there's always one form of optimism for which my dad deserves special recognition, and that was he was a huge Buffalo Bills fan, which means he possessed an almost supernatural ability to forget everything history had taught him by the beginning of every football season. Because every year there was hope, every year this was the year, and he believed, he watched every game, loved going to games, loved when Lance Pizzarni would take him to games. And regardless of what was happening on the field, he always wanted to stay until the final whistle. And I think that's actually a really good metaphor for my father, that he always believed things could get better. He looked for the reasons to be hopeful, and he fought until the final whistle. But nothing mattered more to my dad than his family, and it started with my mom, Their story began in 1973 at a roller skating rink at a Jewish singles mixer. Dad saw Barbara Weingarten. He apparently liked what he saw. But he didn't know her, and he didn't apparently have the nerve to approach her. Instead, he apparently approached all the girls he wasn't interested in. For what reason, we don't know. Dad, what were you thinking? Trying to show off that you could have your veritable pick of the far less attractive girls that were there that night? But he couldn't get her out of his mind, so he enlisted his cousin Linda, Phil and Elliot's mother, to try to get her number. And apparently it worked, because they married later that year, shortly before they left for California so Dad could attend optometry school. Mom worked as an occupational therapist while Dad went through school. They started building their life together in California, and I was born there in 1977. A month later, we packed up everything and moved back to Buffalo because their family mattered so much to both of them. And 5 years and 3 days later, Marnie arrived, and I was stuck with a little sister. She completed our family. Ray raised us at the same house in Williamsville from 1978 to 2025. They celebrated 53 years of marriage. And in August of 2023, on their 50th anniversary, many of you were there, we got to celebrate as they renewed their vows on their 50th anniversary in front of family and friends. And I'll always remember that day. But enough about my mom. My sister and my dad had an extremely close relationship. Marnie was, and I think everyone here would agree with this, Daddy's little girl, and my dad was completely incapable of saying no to her. When she was in high school, he became chauffeur not only to Marnie, but apparently anyone Marnie happened to know. He never asked any questions. He picked them up wherever they were. And their closeness continued throughout adulthood. Marnie and Armand bought their home just a couple of minutes away from my parents, which meant that Dad remained deeply woven into their everyday lives. Armand became another son to him, and when my dad became sick, those relationships became even more important. There's no adequate way to describe what my sister did for my dad during these last 2 years. She became his fiercest advocate, his coordinator, his protector. She researched, she scheduled, she asked questions, she challenged people when something didn't seem right. She kept track of every minute detail the rest of us couldn't possibly keep straight, and she fought for him every single day when I was halfway across the country feeling very guilty that I couldn't be here with him. And while there are many, dozens, of health practitioners in Western New York who will be very sad to hear about my dad's passing, they will also be very relieved to not have to interact with my sister anymore. And Armand, of course, was there too, supporting Dad in more ways than I could possibly list and helping to support Marnie so that she could be there to support my dad. And then there were his grandchildren, or more importantly, the lights of his life. My dad became Zeta in 2014 when my daughter Livy was born, and he absolutely adored being a grandfather. And then came Max and Sylvie and Alec and Hyland, 5 grandchildren. My kids, of course, lived in Minnesota, which meant he couldn't participate as much in their everyday lives, although he still made many great memories with them over the years. But Max and Sylvie lived 2 minutes away, and so he got his dream. He got to be there for his grandkids every day. He got to go to the baseball games and their dance recitals. He got to, well, your dance recital and your baseball game. He got to go to all the school activities and just spend ordinary afternoons and moments with them, all the little pieces of their childhood that don't seem momentous when they're happening, but they're gonna remember for the rest of their lives because of those experiences with him. And in 2023, he got to go back to Disney World with all 5 of his grandchildren, and he got to complain about how much more expensive it was. And 38 years after riding Space Mountain 5 times with his 8-year-old son, he was there watching another generation experience Disney. And thankfully for our pocketbook, all 3 of my children said, meh, and so we don't have to go back. Dad's illness took a lot from him. It took his work, it took golf, it took his independence, and over time it took abilities that had always seemed inseparable from who he was. Watching that happen to someone you love is extraordinarily difficult, but it never erased the life that came before it. And that's the life I want to remember today. Not just the last 2 years, 77 years. I want to remember Dad sitting at the piano with his eyes closed. I want to remember walking Augusta National with him. I want to remember him standing at the Western Wall. I want to remember him with a cup of gelato, about 437 cups of gelato in Florence. And I want to remember him watching the Bills and somehow still believing. I want to remember him cheering for his grandchildren, helping patients see. I want to remember him laughing. And I want to remember the sound of him saying, "Oh, that reminds me, did you ever hear this one?" Because that's my dad. He was an optometrist, a pianist, a golfer, a Bills fan, a husband, a brother, a father-in-law, a Zeta, and a friend, and an incurable teller of bad jokes. And he was also one of the most optimistic people I have ever known, and I suspect you as well. He spent his professional life helping people see more clearly, but I think he taught the people who loved him another kind of vision, too. He showed us that there is joy to be found almost everywhere if you're willing to look for it. In music, in laughter, in family, in a round of golf, in helping another person, in a football team that, despite considerable historical evidence to the contrary, is definitely going to win the Super Bowl this year. And apparently in yet another cup of gelato. Dad, I don't know that I ever told you how much I admired you, or how much I learned from you, or how much of you I carry with me, but I do. I see you in myself every day. In the way that I parent my own children, in the way I interact with others, in the way I try to treat other people, in the way I carry myself and interact with the world. We all do. It's in your children, it's in your grandchildren, it's in every patient you helped, it's in every person you made laugh, or I groan, and it's in every family member and dear friend who wouldn't be anywhere else in the world right now, but right here, right now, honoring your memory. I love you, Dad. I'm incredibly lucky that you were our dad, and I'll miss you for the rest of my life.
Okay, mine is much shorter. Hello, everybody, and thank you again for being here. If you knew my dad, you loved him. It's as simple as that. He was kind, funny, so smart, and endlessly optimistic. He loved my mom and us so much, always telling us how proud he was of everything we did. But really, it's always been us in awe of him. If you don't know already, my dad was quite the Superman. Not only because as a child, he almost jumped off a balcony with a towel for a cape pinned to his back, but even more so because he was diagnosed with cancer 5 times. He was radiated as a child to treat swollen adenoids. Apparently that's what they did in 1951. And that led to multiple cancers and brain tumors throughout his life. Each and every time he approached treatment and whatever came next with optimism and courage, determined to push through. We knew this last battle with grade 4 glioblastoma was the gravest, and he uplifted us once again with a positive attitude until the very end. Today is 2 years to the day of his grand mal seizure that led to this diagnosis. I'm so grateful he beat the odds, as always, and we had a little more time together. My mom bought him this Superman pendant I'm wearing many years ago, and I will cherish the visual reinforcement of all he endured while keeping a smile on his face. I've heard countless stories about how he helped patients, solving their vision issues after years of suffering, or even catching something serious and sending them straight to the hospital. He loved being an eye doctor. I often pushed him to retire or cut back, but his work ethic was like no other. He was dedicated to making a difference for as many people as possible. It wasn't until illness forced him to step away that he finally retired. Some of my favorite memories through the years: his encouragement through my trials and tribulations while dating, reminding me with a smile, "You only need one." Our family trip to Italy when I studied abroad, discovering his love for gelato. The first time he met Armand, my parents were actually early for the first time in their lives because they were so excited to meet him. The way he could fall asleep on the couch in 2 minutes, truly it was impressive. His incredible self-taught piano skills, being able to play any song he heard as long as he could hum the tune in his head. He wowed us for endless hours playing beautiful music over the years, including at my wedding. And his burning question after every work interview I ever had or job I was considering: "So, did they offer a father's pension?" I'll miss everything, Dad. Your amazing advice, watching Bills games with you, laughing at your one-liners and jokes, your constant encouragement, the way you looked at me, how much you loved Armand and Max and Sylvie, marveling at your Jeopardy knowledge, satisfying our sweet tooth together, hearing you call me kiddo, your blue eyes, having you at all the kids' games and events, the way we could communicate with just a look, having the privilege to take care of you these last 2 years. I could go on and on. I was so blessed to have you as my dad. Thank you for everything: the constant love, the laughs, the generosity, and all the memories. I will miss you terribly. One last thing you can do for us: pull some strings up there and get us a Super Bowl win, please. I love you so much, Dad. Rest in peace, knowing you impacted so many that were deeply, deeply loved. Amazing. Okay.
The ancient Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai, asked his students this: "What trait do you need to have in order to live a worthy life?" And each of them offered a different answer. Rabbi Eliezer taught, "A good eye." Rabbi Joshua said, "A good companion." Rabbi Yossi said, "A good neighbor." Rabbi Shimon said, "Foresight." And Rabbi Elazar Ha'arach responded, "A good heart." Considering each of these answers, Rabbi Yochanan replies, "I prefer the answer of Rabbi Elazar Ha'arach because having a good heart encompasses all of these other qualities." We will remember Mark as someone with a good heart and as someone whose heart contained all of these qualities. Rabbi Eliezer taught, "A good eye." I think that one explains itself. Mark was passionate about his profession, and as we've heard, he was among the best of them. He was the kind of doctor that we all seek, excellent in his field, making diagnoses that saved lives, and also delightful to spend time with during the visit. Someone who takes your problem seriously and commits himself to finding a solution. An ayin tova, a good eye, is more than just being able to see and help others to see. It means a generosity of spirit, wanting the best for people, seeing goodness in the world where others may not. A good companion and a good neighbor. Mark was someone that you just loved to be around. He didn't need to be the center of attention. When you needed calm and patience, that's when he was there. He was certainly a good neighbor in the city of good neighbors, taking advantage of all the local theater options, Shays, 710, loving his bills, weathering all of those ups and downs. We heard about his golf. It sounds very impressive. Not only would he play with you, but with his abundant patience, could help you improve your swing. A good companion. No one knows the depth of his companionship better than his family. His beloved Barbara, his brother Robert, sister-in-law, children, Scott and Marnie, their spouses, Carrie Armand, his beautiful, beautiful grandchildren. He was your greatest support. You gave him pride and fulfillment beyond measure. The last 2 years were so hard, and you did everything that you could to ensure that he received the highest quality of care, that your questions were sufficiently answered, that he was comfortable and safe and could make the most of the time he had. And that was the only gift you could give him in response to his devotion over the years, and you gave generously. Rabbi Shimon taught foresight, seeing what was coming up ahead. He had an unmatched way of understanding situations that others could not. As a doctor, he could see what needed to be treated, could understand what would happen if something was not taken care of. As a friend and husband and family member, he didn't have every answer, but he knew that through his calm and his compassion, he could be the steady support that you needed in order to navigate any challenge you faced. And when it came to his own illness, he also had a certain intuition about what might happen. And yet he fought, and he never felt sorry for himself, and he wore a smile on his face. A good heart, this Rabbi Yochanan says, encompasses it all. What more can we say about Mark than that he had a good heart? Through his life, he has taught us to be brave and kind, patient, and to have hope. It is not naive to hope, because that optimism was his strength, this power that allowed him to overcome multiple health challenges. Though he is no longer with us in body, a spirit like his lives on forever. He is there to encourage us, to give us a smile as we think of one of his famous one-liners. He is with us in spirit to offer us an extra dose of patience in the moments that we need it the most. His good heart will always be his legacy, and all of us who knew him and loved him now carry a piece of his good heart within ours. May God comfort all who mourn for Mark. May his memory be a blessing. Please rise for the memorial prayer.
El Malay Rachamim Shochen Bameromim Hametzeh Menucha Nechona Tachat השכינה. במעלות קדושים וטהרים, כזוהר הרקיע. מזהירים את נשמת מלך איסר בן אשר זלגלתה, שהלך לעולמו בגן עדן, תהא מנוחתו. אנא בעל הרחמים, הסתירהו בסתר כנפיך לעולמים, וצרור בצרור החיים את נשמתו. אדוני הוא נחלתו, וינוח בשלום על משכבו, ונאמר אמן.
God of abundant mercy, God most high, may the soul of Mark Rodman, who has gone into eternity, find the gift of perfect peace in your embrace, together with the holy and pure, whose light shines like the radiance of heaven. Compassionate God, hold him close to you forever, so that his soul may be bound up in the bond of life eternal. May he find a home with you, and may he rest in peace. Together we say, Amen.
Just a couple announcements before we proceed to Elm Lawn Cemetery. Shiva will be observed at Marnie and Armand's home, 4343 Viscount Drive in Williamsville, today from 7 to 9, Monday through Wednesday, 2 to 4, and 7 to 9, with a minion service at 7:30. Again, at Armand and Marnie's residence, 43 Viscount Drive, Williamsville, today 7 to 9, Monday through Wednesday, 2 to 4, and 7 to 9, with minion service at 7:30 p.m. I'd like to ask the following individuals to, at this pallbearers, kindly step to the front with the casket, please. Son-in-law Armand Morris, John Bergholzer, dear friend. Cousin Lance Pizzarni, nephew Jay Goldman, nephew David Goldman, cousin Evan Pizzarni, cousin Philip Rothman, and cousin Elliot Rothman. As we escort Mark to his final resting place, I'd like to ask everyone to please remain standing, and the family can follow behind as the casket exits this sanctuary. For those of you going to the cemetery, please put your four-way flashers and your headlights on, as we will be going in procession to Elm Lawn Cemetery. Again, on behalf of the family, thank you for attendance here today. This does conclude the synagogue portion of today's service. May we all go away the way Mark would want us to, in good health and in peace. Thank you again.